Hi, I'm in a Subaru Forester 2.5 litre, and I'm going to tell you some of the things I really like about this vehicle, followed by some of the things I don't like about this vehicle. Right, so the things I really like about this car. It is common to have electronic seat adjustments, but what is less common is to have memory seats. And the Forester, this particular model, has the memory seats, and it has two settings. So if I press number 1, there we can see the seat is getting ready. But the car takes it one step further. The mirrors also adjust. So that means if you're sharing the car with a short person or a tall person, then you can set the memory seats and it will also adjust the mirrors. Another great feature is here is the key. I lock the vehicle. The mirrors do fold in, which is nice. But when I unlock the vehicle, notice that the seat and the mirrors are now getting alignment to position 1. So what that means is I can link this key to the memory profile. So in this case, here's the key and it's now ready for my wife. No, this is not my key. My key is much more manly than that. Right, so this is my key, and I'll show you what happens when I lock and unlock the vehicle. Right, so here is my key. I lock it, and then I unlock it, and the car has been programmed to my key for someone who's taller than 6 foot. The turning circle on this car is excellent. It has a full turning circle of 10.8 meters. That is better than most cars in this segment. This is very handy when needing to do a U-turn or getting in and out of parkings. Now this vehicle has a boxer engine. One of the benefits of the boxer engine is it sits lower because the pistons move laterally instead of vertically. So what I'm showing is how recessed the engine is. So the bulk of the weight is lower, which means that the center of gravity is lower. When you're driving around bends, you don't feel like the car wants to topple over. Now, there's a lot of marketing about the boxer engine and its low center of gravity in the Forester, but what does that translate to real-world experience? Well, I've owned the vehicle for over 3 months and I've done over 7,500 Ks, and I can say that it is true. For sure, the car's balance is very good, but the most important thing is that the car does not feel like it's nosediving, or if I take a corner quite quickly, it doesn't feel like I'm driving a tall SUV with a high ground clearance. Yes, of course, it's not a X3 or an X5, but I have compared it to the Haval H6, the Chery Tiggo 8 Pro, the Mazda CX-5, the Hyundai Tucson, the Toyota RAV4, and while the Mazda probably has the edge when it comes to the feel, the enjoyment for the driver, but the Forester is not far behind. Now the Forester is all-wheel drive all the time. So that means if you're going 120 kilometers on the freeway, the car is still all-wheel drive. Now, some of the higher models in the competitors, for example, the Hyundai and the Mazda, they are all-wheel drive options. But if you read the fine print, you will see that it cuts out at 60 kilometers an hour for some and maybe a bit higher for others. So what is nice about the Forester is the all-wheel drive system is full-time. So that actually provides a very smooth, unique feel, especially when you're going at highway speeds. The next thing I like about this car is just how wide the doors open. And when getting in and out of the vehicle, there's nothing obstructing the seat. Another thing that I like is over here, this is covered by the bottom of the door. So all the doors are full frame. They go right to the end. Because of this rubber seal here, we don't get dust and sand on this section over here. Another thing I like about this vehicle is I can open the trunk with the key. And then I can also close the trunk with the key and a button inside. It will not let you do this if the car is not in park though. Another nice thing is that the car is quite clever. It won't let you lock the keys in the car. It won't let you lock the car if the car is still on. And you also cannot lock the vehicle if the trunk is open. The Forester is known to have good visibility all around. But one thing that I really like about this car is the seating position. When I'm in the vehicle, I don't feel like I'm encapsulated and contained. This is more open plan. I'm quite a big person and therefore there's a lot of space for me to move around. So I really like the driver position of this vehicle. And now it's time for the bad news. Now this vehicle comes with a great sound system and there's quite a big speaker in the door. But one of the problems is rattles. For example, if I leave my key over here, I will hear it rattling when I'm driving. Listen to these rattles. So in order for me to have a rattle-free vehicle, I have to remove everything from all the doors. Another thing I don't like is it's quite difficult to get your hand in here. The clearance is quite narrow and there's a lip here. Maybe if you're going 4x4ing and it's very bumpy, you don't want things to pop out, but 99% of the time you're just on regular roads. If I want to get something out, it gets caught on that lip. Ideally, if they could have put some felt in here, some carpeting, then there wouldn't be so many rattles. Because a lot of bass comes from the speaker, we do get a lot of rattles. I'm showing the pedals, and on the far left is the pedal where you rest your left leg. So it looks like this. Now, if you're someone who's very tall, this is quite high. So it does mean that I don't have a lot of room over here. So it then forces me to have the chair quite far back. If you're somebody who's more on the shorter side, this is probably not going to be a problem. But for tall people, while you can get used to this, it is just a pet peeve of mine. So I feel like that left resting pedal could be recessed a bit further in, giving my leg a bit more room. Now, does this mean that my knee is knocking on the side here? Not really. My knee is above the side and my shin actually rests on the soft portion. But maybe for someone who's shorter, their knee might hit this hard piece over here. But overall, it's still comfortable for me. Now, my phone does actually fit in this section over here, but then I can't plug it in. Now, because this car comes with the wired Android Auto, I have to plug it in. And because I have to plug it in, my phone ends up lying here next to the gear lever. Now, obviously, you can get a wireless dongle to make this whole setup wireless, and then my phone would probably fit here, but it is very snug and it doesn't fit properly. So it has these vertical vents. Now, one of the problems is the vertical vent faces directly into the steering wheel. So if I have my hand here, my hand is effectively blocking the nice cool air which I would want on my face on a hot summer's day. Over here is the display. It's very clear and it's very bright, and you can adjust the brightness. And on many cars, as it is on the Forester, is if it's in the night, this dims a bit, and when it's in the day, it's brighter. Now, one of the problems with the Forester is that happens very quickly. For example, if I'm driving to work early and it's still dark outside, but then a little bit of light tricks the car into thinking that it's now a bit later, then it's very bright. Then immediately it goes dark again. So it changes its brightness too quickly. It should be a little bit more delayed. Probably my worst thing about the Forester is the armrest. Now, I'm sitting quite far back because I'm just over 6'1" and my arm is resting quite nicely on the armrest. Now, that's not the problem. The problem is if I want to get something out of this armrest, because as you can see, I literally cannot open this. I am totally blocked by these very comfortable seats, but look at this. The only way I can open this is if I do a full twist. Now, if I want to get something out of this armrest, you can see that I'm literally using my other hand, and the opening here is quite snug. So it is not easy for me to get into this armrest and actually use it as a storage compartment. Right, so I've moved my chair a bit forward for someone who's shorter than 6 foot, and notice that my arm is barely resting on the armrest. So this is not very functional now. So now, hang on, look at this. This is even worse. So if I want to use this for a quick access for getting things, it's pretty pointless. This is now out of reach. So yes, it is comfortable for me as a tall person, but as a shorter person, I wonder how people are using this armrest. So I feel like this could have been a bit longer, and the drink holders over here, which are very useful, and I like these little rubber flaps, but this could have been exactly here. And this X mode section here could be built into the dash, or there are many buttons by the knee area on the side of the steering wheel. Therefore, we would have this at least 10 to 15 centimeters over here donated to the armrest, which could be a lot further forward, giving much better access and utility. Now, some people like to drive with their elbow or their arm resting on the door side over here where the window is. Now, I'm one of those people, and I find it is not that comfortable. Yes, there's a little bit of sponge here, but not much. Also, it's beveled in and there's a seam running through the middle. So I find myself not getting a comfortable position here. And after a while, I feel like it gets uncomfortable. So I tend to drive with my arm lower down. It would be nice if there was a little bit of a thicker space over here and I could rest my arm a bit better. Further down, it is wider. They could have extended this width more towards the back. So then one could have put their arm on this flat portion rather than on this beveled portion, especially for people who are tall and who sit further back. This is a very small thing, but on the dashboard it's telling me to fill up the windscreen wiper liquid. Now the thing is, it does not latch. What I mean by that is that warning comes on only when I go around the bend, and then when the level stabilizes, it doesn't tell me I need to fill up the liquid. Then when I go around the bend again, it tells me to fill up. It's like the water level is oscillating just below the sensor and above the sensor. The sensor should just latch. Once it's gone below the sensor, say 3 or 4 times, then it knows just stay on all the time. This speaks to the other issue which I mentioned earlier about the screen changing its brightness too quickly. If I go on a bridge and it suddenly gets darker, or if I'm driving on a street where there's quite a few trees, the screen display changes too quickly. It hasn't gone from night to day or day to night, so it shouldn't change the screen brightness. In the same way, the windscreen wiper fluid, once it's gone below the level, it should count maybe 2 or 3 times or wait a certain amount of time, and then it should latch, and then it doesn't go on, off, on, off, on, off. I just feel like it's a little bit simplistic. The car has this very shiny gloss plastic around the gear knob and around the gear lever. And even though this vehicle has 35% window tint, at times the sun can catch this gloss plastic and it can shine in your eyes. Now, the Subaru uses 2 of these cameras, which it calls eyesight, which sit on either side of the rear view mirror. Many cars rely on radar, but the Subaru relies on camera sensors. Now, sometimes I wonder if the eyesight works consistently. Now, the reason I say this is as follows. Right, this is just an informal test. Now, there I have a garage door which isn't quite open yet, and there I'm attempting to drive into the garage. And what I've done is, many times when I've come home, I check to see whether the eyesight will notice that the garage door is moving or it's not open fully, and will it sense that and therefore apply emergency brakes. Sometimes it does, sometimes it doesn't. Many times I'm driving and it gives warnings and it seems like it works, but other times I feel like I'm doing the exact same activity and it doesn't warn me. However, I would prefer a car that warns me less than a car that is overactive and then is doing an emergency brake on the highway when there was nothing in the way. Therefore, I'm quite tolerant of this, and I can't say with authority whether the eyesight is working 100% or not, because I haven't done sufficient tests, but these were just informal tests. Right, this is not necessarily a review video, but I do want to mention the CVT transmission. Now, one of the things I like about the car, now let me say that again, I like about the car is actually the CVT transmission, because it is very smooth. In fact, Subaru have programmed some fake gears, which I find actually are not necessary. This is in South Africa, there are a lot of potholes, and this vehicle handles it very well. I would prefer thicker tires and more of a sportier feel, but then you get the problem of a bumpier ride, especially with potholes and road imperfections. If you want more the BMW experience with the lower profile tires and the bigger mags, then yes, you will get that sportier, closer to the ground feel, but then you have the bumpiness. And also with the road imperfections here in South Africa, I find that that's a little bit of a problem. I'm somebody who does have a BMW. I have a 7 Series BMW, and straightening mags because of road imperfections is quite frustrating. So I can say that one of the things I really like about this car is how smooth it is, and that is coupled perfectly well with a CVT transmission because it suits the type of vehicle. Now, I've actually looked at some of the reviews. I think Edmunds, some of the adjectives they've used for this vehicle is lackluster acceleration, gutless. Personally, I do not feel that at all. Let's just talk about acceleration. What is acceleration? It is the change in velocity over time. So the biggest question that I'm asking is, how long did it take me to go from A to B? And in this vehicle, I feel like it's not slow. In fact, I'm going around pretty quick in this vehicle. It's just that you won't feel your gear changes. You don't get that feeling of acceleration or of an increase in acceleration. You don't feel like you are pushed back into the chair, which is actually very relaxing. But does that mean that you are not changing your speed? No, not at all. I feel like the car has got a very controlled, almost a uniform acceleration. So that doesn't mean you're not going fast. It hasn't got the best acceleration in the segment, and I will put up a spreadsheet to just show you some of the vehicles which this car compares with. But I did also test drive the 2 litre, and that I would say is pretty lackluster, and I wouldn't get the 2 litre. This is the 2.5 litre, and my wife is driving the Mercedes compressor, which is a bit like a turbo, and she actually feels that this car is better. If you compare the acceleration, it is actually better, and this is an SUV. I think one of the problems is the gear change gives the impression of a faster vehicle because you are feeling that acceleration. So the difference is you don't really feel the acceleration, you just notice that you are going faster. So suddenly I look at the dashboard and I see I'm going 100 or I'm going 120. It doesn't take long to get to that speed, not at all. But what you do notice is that suddenly you are actually speeding. Right, just to further explain my point about the acceleration. Now, on the left-hand side, I've got different model of cars, and then here I've got the time duration to get to 100 kilometers per hour or 62 miles per hour, and this is just the source where I got my data. So having a look at the Forester, the 2.5 litre, the one that I'm talking about is 9.5 seconds to get to 100 kilometers per hour. But let's look at some other vehicles. If we look at the Hyundai Tucson 2-liter diesel all-wheel drive, it's 9.4. If we look at the Honda CR-V 1.5-liter turbo, it's 9.4. And then a car which is even more expensive, the Hyundai Santa Fe 2.2-liter diesel is 9 seconds. So it's only half a second faster. Look at the BMW xDrive 2-liter diesel is 8 seconds. So it's only 1.5 seconds faster. Now let's look at the cars that are actually slower. We've got the Haval H6 2021 version, it's 10 seconds. And then the Honda CR-V 2-liter, which is a smaller engine, and it's 11.2 seconds. So what I'm showing is that I'm quite surprised when people say that the Subaru is sluggish or lackluster, because to get to 100 kilometers per hour, it's kind of in the same ballpark as these vehicles over here. So I find it quite amusing when people say that the Subaru has that type of acceleration. And actually, I think it's more because it's so smooth. The Forester is definitely not the fastest, and I have test driven all of these cars. And the one that I forgot to put here was the H6 Hybrid, which had very nice acceleration, but it kept wheel spinning on the front wheels, so it actually made the acceleration quite useless. So one thing I can say about the Forester is it's very predictable. Some of these cars that I test drove are very unpredictable. I actually feel like they're almost unsafe, some of them. So for example, you're at a traffic light and you want to quickly turn. If the roads are wet, some of these cars have very unpredictable performance, while the Subaru is predictable right up until the point where you feel like you're going to lose control of the vehicle, like you're pushing it to the limit. But all the way to that point, it's predictable and stable, and I feel like that's what the strength of the Subaru is. Another thing is the car seems to be improving quite a bit as the engine wears in. Earlier I said that you don't feel the acceleration in the back of the chair, like you don't feel like you're being pressed back, but the car does have a sport mode, and if you do put it in sport mode, those fake gears are more pronounced. So would I recommend this car to other people? Well, I thoroughly enjoyed this vehicle, and even though I've said some of the negative things about the car, I find a lot more negative things about the other cars, which is why I chose the Forester. Alright, thanks for watching, and cheers.